Hello, welcome. Heya, huva, ilta. Somebody's gonna know what that means. Anyway, this is the War Room, and this is day 56 of Russia's incursion into the Ukraine. And surprisingly, we have a big show for you today, because today was a big news day. It's almost as if the world decided that after a week of no news, that they would just sort of vomit all the news in one big info dump. And I used multiple sources for this. So it came as a bit of a surprise when I started looking at the sheer volume of stuff that we've got to cover today. And trust me, there's a lot. I had 3 candidates today that I was going to label the news story of the day, but I think I landed on one for sure that's going to be the news story of the day. And I'm going to probably lose my voice reading the whole thing that I had read and written and edited down. That would be more digestible to you. This is also the first war room where I used a white background for the photo today. I had to because the photo I used was the map I described to you yesterday about the remnants of Mariupol. And if you look very carefully, there's nothing left. Like, Mariupol's got a lot of blank space, but everything else is completely destroyed. And obviously the Alamo, being the Azovstal Iron and Steel Works, is smack dab in the... well, I wouldn't say right in the middle, but it's middle-ish. And it has become the Alamo, much like the Alamo was for Texas and San Antonio, which was sort of smack dab in the middle-ish, slightly southeast of center. Just like that. So I think the parallel sticks. If you didn't know what that intro was that I did, that was Finnish. I was challenged this evening by Shady Hill Homestead. He's finding these new creative ways to greet me, and I've been trying to find the ways to respond properly. So I think I nailed that one. And looks like we also got Randy and the finest of apes has arrived. So good evening to all of you. Scott's in my panel tonight, so I know he's in the chat, but he's already, in the green room too. So yeah, I did a new upper and lower for the layout here, just because I had to do something that bled into the white background. Hopefully that looks seamless and cool and good. I know that the war room part's a little hard to read because of a white background, but whatever. Details. So yeah, I told the guys that I was going to do a real short intro today because we've got a lot of stuff to cover. So let me just go ahead and start pulling them in because we got a lot to go through, so we're just going to get started. So, panelists in no particular order. Scott here, and Mikhail Neitstritsky is here. So, good evening to both of you. We are full. The scroller is up to date. I didn't get to use that source from yesterday, so I can show you the plus minuses, but there were some serious plus minuses between yesterday and today, especially in terms of APCs, tanks that were knocked out. I think helicopters knocked out was like +4 or something. Like, it was a pretty good day if you were a Ukrainian military, If you were in combat today, if you were the Ukrainians, you did really good, considering, the chaos that's going on in Mariupol today. So, let's just go ahead and get straight into this because I don't know how long this is going to take, but my goal is to try to blitz through these and still try to get you in here or get you out of here within an hour. Like, that's my goal, because the 2-hour thing, 3-hour thing, they're cool, but honestly, how many of you are actually watching the whole thing, right? You're probably catching it in replays like 5 or 6 bits a day, and it's just like, let me just give it to all you in one shot. Like, vomit. Bleh. Alright, so, first story I've got for you today actually came from yesterday our time, but it is correct to day 56, so it would be 6:07 a.m. Ukrainian time. So it's an early morning story, dawn, right? Russia rejected a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine that the United Nations Secretary General requested for the purpose of civilian evacuation during the Eastern Orthodox Holy Week that led up to Easter. Russia's deputy UN ambassador said the ceasefire request was, quote, not sincere and only would provide time to arm Ukrainian soldiers. Well, duh. Dmitry Polyansky, the deputy ambassador, told the Security Council Tuesday that the ceasefire requests were insincere and, in practice, they merely point to an aspiration to provide Kyiv nationalists breathing room to regroup and receive more drones, more anti-tank missiles, and more man-pads. If you don't know what those are, man-pads are man-portable air defense systems. So, man-pad.
Not according to Squib, anyways.
Wow. We haven't seen him since I don't know shit about war, so whatever. Although, I think I've been calling it pretty damn close since, so. Anyway, I did tell you about the bunker buster thing the day before, and Russians started using bunker busters, so whatever. I don't know shit about war. Anyway, and also smaller and more portable surface-to-air missiles. So, yeah, they're saying, look, no ceasefire, no nothing, because you're just buying time to get rearmed. Yeah, well, what the fuck did you guys do last week? You did the same thing. You retreated like cowards with your tail between your legs, and then you retreated to a neutral country, Belarus, to rearm and refuel and all that shit. So I don't want to hear it. Moving on. A couple hours later, 3 hours later, as a matter of fact. Now it's 9 o'clock over there, way over there, in Scandinavia, also known as Norway. The Norwegian government has sent 100 Mistral, yeah, that's what it's called. I have a picture for you, actually. Here you go. I gotta admit, I gotta comment about that picture, but Norwegian government has sent 100 Mistral air defense missiles to Ukraine. This came from Defense Minister Bjørn. Oh God, I fucked it up already. It's Bjørn Arild Gram. Bjørn. The O is that O with the cross through. It's like year or whatever. So it's Bjørn Arild Gram. He said Monday morning, according to their government release, the Norwegian armed forces are planning to phase out that weapon, and the government said that the donation wouldn't have a major impact on their military operations. It is still a modern and effective weapon, so it should be a great benefit to Ukraine. If you look at that, it almost looks as if they took two Carl Gustavs, and strapped it to I don't know, almost like an anti-aircraft ring mount with like a real primitive sight in the middle that you have to put your face up against.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, and then you could tell it's got these pivoting points. Yeah, it's got these pivoting points built on them. So you can walleye or pigeon toe the grouping between the two. You can get them to cross or you can get them to splay out. I don't know. It looks kind of neat, I guess.
I like the British one better.
Well, yeah. The price was right on these, so they sent it.
Because the British one has like 3 and they're stacked.
Well, the British are overcompensating something.
Lack of a military?
All right, moving on.
Being a former world power?
You mean lack of a spine, but yes.
There's a lot of that going around these days.
Unfortunately.
All right, moving on. Around the same time, 9:08 London. They're roughly the same time zone. And this is a sports story, which I don't share much, but when it's about banning people, why not? Wimbledon plans to ban Russian and Belarusian players from their tournament this summer, according to reports overnight Tuesday. The London tournament is set to start in late June. Wimbledon will be the first tennis tournament to ban players over the war in Ukraine, but it allows other sports that have imposed bans, including the Paralympics in Beijing following the February invasion. Number 2 men's player Daniil Medvedev, another Medvedev, would be among those affected by the ban. We are in very close dialogue with the All England Club, the government, with the tours, Britain's Lawn Tennis Association chief executive Steve Lloyd said earlier this month. We are very conscious of the public sentiment in this area, and we're trying to navigate what that needs to look like in the summer events in Britain this year. So there's been a lot of bans, actually, for Russia. And the one that really surprises me, which is coming up May 7th, I think, because Cinco de Mayo is in the middle of the week, so I think it's May 7th. It's sort of like, do you guys remember Rocky 4? Right? Rocky 4 was against Ivan Drago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I
Well,
will destroy you.
yeah, I will destroy you. Yeah, and then I think that's when Sylvester Stallone met his wife, who played Drago's wife, right? Like they were married for a while, those two. Anyway, point is, we're about to have that again. It's going to be the United States versus Soviet Russia because uh, Canelo Alvarez, even though he's from Jalisco, Guadalajara, Mexico, uh, he fights out of Los Angeles. And so it's sort of this weird thing where it's like America wants to claim him because he fights out of LA, but then all he does is Mexican pride with the flag and the colors, and he only speaks Spanish, even though his English he can speak English, but it's very broken, right? But on an elemental level, it's still us versus them because he's going to be fighting Dmitry Bivol, which is a fight that people like me have been waiting for like 4 fucking years. So it's finally going to happen because there's two like light heavyweight or super middleweight champions that are Russian, Dmitry Bivol and oh shit, I forgot the other guy's name now. Artur Beterbiev. It's Arthur, but they spelled Artur, Artur. Those are two of the best boxers in the world right now, and they're right there in Alvarez's weight class or within his weight class. So for him to fight Bivol is huge because that guy is dangerous. It's one of the toughest fighters in the world right now, and he's taking that fight. So we get to see this America versus Russia thing, or America allied with Mexico versus Russia this time. So whatever. But what's kind of weird is Triple G, Gennady Golovkin. He's Ukrainian. He's fighting, or he just fought, and he took boots to ass to a Japanese champion. His name escapes me right now. I'm usually really good at this. So he fought, despite the fact that I thought he was going to go and fight for his country, but he didn't. Vasily Lomachenko, who was a lightweight champion before, he actually did stop boxing to go fight in Ukraine, which is really, admirable. And then the last one is, what's the last one? Shit, I forgot. There's a third. Oh, yeah. The heavyweight champion. So that's, oh, shit, it's on the tip of my tongue. He's a bit of a loon, actually. Hang on a sec, I'll pull it right up real quick. Of course, it's going to show you the one before, not the current one. What the hell? Alexander Usyk. So he's fighting Tyson Fury? No, he's fighting the British former heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. So that's coming up. So like a lot of Ukrainian fighters are going to be out there in the sphere of sports. But the funny thing is Dmitry Bivol hasn't been banned from boxing yet. Because, I mean, let's be honest, he's not a soldier. He's a fighter. He's an athlete, right? But whatever. Wimbledon, ban. Like, Russian, GTFO. That's what's going to happen. Moving on, because I did not expect to take that long to explain that. Sorry. Let's see. About an hour later, but now we're going back to Ukraine, so it's about 11 o'clock over there. And we got this update from the UK Defense Ministry. Let's see. Russia's presence along Ukraine's eastern border has continued to grow as fighting in the Donbass intensifies. This came from UK's Defense Ministry in their Wednesday morning update. Following Russia's withdrawal from Kyiv, air activity would likely remain low, but there's still a risk of precision strikes against priority targets throughout Ukraine, which, yes, there was. We heard about that earlier today. Russian attacks on cities across Ukraine show their intent and try to disrupt the movement of reinforcements and weaponry to the east of the country. Obviously. I think that's the same as the bullet points on the screen, but I'll just give you, or better yet, just pause if you want to read the rest of that, but I'm pretty sure that's what that was. I just sort of paraphrased it. So, moving right along. And we got an update from the International Atomic Energy Agency at 12 o'clock noon over there. So here it is. And it says Ukraine informed IAEA today that direct communications between their national regulator and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant has been restored. Hurrah! It had been down for over a month after the Russian forces had moved in and held the plant staff, I think is a good way to put it, hostage for like, what, 40 days? Remember that? They were like, they didn't know if the guys were still alive, if they were getting sleep, if they were eating or whatever. And then finally Russia was like, okay, you can cycle them out. And then they were digging trenches, and now all of a sudden, you know, their soldiers have like 6 toes on 1 foot and like 4 eyes and shit like that. Because who the hell thought it was a great idea to dig trenches in radioactive dirt?
You forgot the tentacles.
Well, they're not Japanese. Unless the song, you know, I'm Turning Japanese was playing, then maybe a tentacle did pop out or two.
It might have been like
All right, moving on. A few minutes later, still Ukraine, still about quarter afternoon. And let me make sure I have a picture or not for this one. This is a pretty long story, so I had to scroll down a bit. Okay, so I actually put this guy's name here because I wanted to remember it. There's a photo of him. That's some very seriously appreciable beardage. Like, that's thick. Anyway, I can't grow that. The commander of a Ukrainian Marine unit, which would be the 36th in Mariupol, made an urgent last-ditch plea for Ukrainian women and children, along with wounded Marines sheltering in the Azovstal iron and steel works, to be evacuated to a neutral third country, as the Russian deadline to surrender Mariupol had loomed Wednesday. This is our appeal to the world. We are probably facing our final days, if not hours. Major Serhiy Volnya, commander of the 36th Marine Brigade, said in a video that he posted to Facebook. Shocker, right? This was according to a translation that was posted with the video. That's actually a screenshot from the video. I spared you playing it. We are only defending one object, the Azovstal plant, where, in addition to military personnel, there are also civilians who have fallen victim to this war. He said that there were more than 500 wounded at the plant and hundreds of civilians sheltering in the building. Sidebar. I have a problem with that. If you're going onto public social media, do not advertise the number of wounded you have. Because the enemy is watching and they're going to be like, oh shit, they're all down on their luck. We can go in there and just steamroll them. Like, don't tell them how many people are wounded. They're going to know how easy it makes it easier for them to assess the threat. They can just like march on in there and kill all of you now. Like, don't ever tell people how many you've got wounded or how many you've got left, things like that, because you're helping them size you up, which is stupid. But I don't know shit about war. Sorry. An unverified video of women and children said to be in the bunkers beneath the Azovstal plant in Mariupol has circulated in the recent days. Moscow has given Ukrainian forces several. Now, I didn't know this. I thought they made one red line in the sand like Obama did, and then they allowed themselves to be crossed, and then they made a second one. I was wrong. They made several red lines, and they continually let the Ukrainians cross it. And they keep saying, okay, fine, then tomorrow you better surrender. Or, okay, fine, maybe in 2 hours you can surrender. You know, stuff like that. So, it says Moscow has given Ukrainian forces several deadlines to to surrender the plant and leave without their weapons. The latest surrender demand was to expire at 2 p.m. Moscow time today, April 20th. Because it's 420, man. We all appeal to all world leaders to help us and extract the Marines and civilians to a third-party state, Volnya pleaded. He tagged U.S. President Joe Biden. That tag went nowhere because Biden doesn't even know what the hell Facebook is.
Or what do you have for breakfast?
That too. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Okay, he might have seen it, but his Twitter's more active than his Facebook. And Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Maybe he saw it? I don't know. The commander previously appealed to Pope Francis to help civilians from Azovstal. Because, we all know prayer works so well. Uh, the troops
Yeah.
have defied previous deadlines Russia imposed, demanding that they either surrender or die. The Azovstal Iron and Steel Works was once the site of one of the largest metallurgical factories in Europe, but since the onslaught of war more than 50 days ago, it became a symbol of the city's resistance, the Alamo. The plant's network of underground tunnels has become home to the Mariupol residents seeking shelter from the barrage of shelling and a base of several military units. And if you weren't watching yesterday, I did give Scott credit for this because he postulated 3 or 4 days ago that the reason that they're hiding there is because it's probably got a network of tunnels they can move around in, sort of like Enemy at the Gates. God damn it if he was right. But I'd like to think of it more like Metro Last Light, because that's more of a modern thing. And for those of you who are very keen on this series, you probably recognize that the very first thumbnail from the very first day of the War Room was a screenshot of Metro Last Light, or at least the train station of one. So now you know why I said that.
Although, were they using Mosins in Metro?
You had some pretty, yeah,
Yeah,
there were a few.
females.
Despite
Okay,
weeks
because
of
they
intense,
definitely were using them in Enemy at the Gates.
yes. Well, that was 50 something years prior to, or 60 something years prior to. Anyway,
Well, I hate to tell you, but probably some of those Ukrainian soldiers might have one or two of them over there too.
Oh, I hate to tell you,
no
but war
fighting in
never
the war
changes.
room.
War
Anyway,
never changes.
yeah.
War never changes. No, that's true.
All right, so despite weeks of intense shelling that has resulted in the death of more than 20,000 Mariupol residents, according to Mayor Vadim Boychenko, Russian forces have been unable to take the strategically important city. An advisor to the Russian-backed separatist forces in the Donetsk region said that Azovstal tunnels were a leading contributor to Russia's failed attempts to completely besiege the city, claiming that they could withstand even a nuclear strike. Russia's launched a full-scale offensive in the eastern Ukraine this week after pivoting from broad-based attacks across the country, resulting in a massive assault on the capital, or including a massive assault on the capital of Kyiv. Now,
Ooh.
this story, again, like the social media thing talking about the number of wounded, sets a very dangerous precedent. Because if you know where those tunnels go, you can take over one outlying building that has access to said tunnels and then pump said tunnels full of radiological or biological or chemical weapons, and after everyone in those tunnels are dead, there'll be no one left to report the fact that Russia used chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons underground. So, bad on you journalists for talking about the tunnels that the Russians can stop and read and go, you know what we ought to do? Then again, I just gave them the idea by spelling it out. So, I guess I'm a bastard too.
Shame on you.
Shame on me. But if you read a story saying that people have been coming out, with like almond and sick infected green corpses and, symptoms of chemical attack being pulled out of those tunnels, just remember this moment, because I told you so. Tunnels are the worst place to hide because all they have to do is gas them. Anyway, and nobody will be around to report it because they'll all be dead at the Alamo. Anyway, let's see. So that was at noon Ukrainian time already. Yeah. Okay. So next story, I'm gonna take you on a trip to the Far East, where it is a quarter after 7 p.m. Tokyo time. Japan formally revoked Russia's most favored nation status on Wednesday, so they followed suit because we did the same thing. The revocation was part of several sanctions imposed on Russia by Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. The country also previously expelled 8 Russian diplomats and trade officials from Tokyo last month. If you have a comment, go ahead.
Nope.
All right, moving on. About 2 hours later, but I'm going to take you back to Ukraine, so it's only 2:18, quarter after 2 o'clock afternoon. And let me make sure if I have a photo. I do. Here you go. That's an actual photo from the Ironworks, by the way. An offer from Moscow this week for Ukrainian soldiers in Mariupol to lay down their arms in exchange for safe evacuation out of the besieged city had 0 takers, the report says, with one Marine commander saying that nobody believes you people, so of course we're not going to surrender to you people.
Surprise,
I love
surprise.
that. I love that response, though. Nobody believes you. Like, I really like that. The tactical flop has prompted Russia's Ministry of Defense to announce Wednesday that it will once again offer the Nationalist Battalion fighters and foreign mercenaries to stop fighting and lay down their weapons by 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Their first deadline and safe surrender offer on Tuesday passed with not a single soldier agreeing. No one believes the Russians, Major Serhiy Volnya of Ukraine's 36th Separate Marine Brigade told the Washington Post, adding that others who previously have trusted Russia's guarantees of safe passage were met with gunfire and killed. That would be true.
It's
Ukraine.
the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah. Come on out, everything will be fine. Lay down your arms and put your hands up so we get a very clean shot at your torso. Anyway. Let's see, where did I leave off?
Here's the thing, Sean.
Hmm?
They said nobody believes you to the Russians. And the funny thing is, nobody in the world believes Russia these days.
Yeah, exactly. He says nobody believes the Russians.
Yep. Nobody
So,
believes them.
Ukrainian soldiers are trying to defend Mariupol, or let's see, Ukrainian soldiers trying to defend Mariupol are taking cover in the Azovstal Iron and Steelworks factory. Ukraine also says that there are civilians inside the facility. There's a lot of repeat here, or overlap. The Facebook video posted Wednesday, Volnya says he believes Russian forces are currently outnumbering Ukrainians there 10 to 1. So, you have tired conscript Russians with Mosins, but you've got Ukrainian Marines with machine guns and apparently Humvees. 10 to 1 doesn't seem to be that bad. Then again, they have bunker buster bombs that they're hitting them with too, so not cool. Moving right along. Let's see, my next story comes out about an hour or so later, so it's about 3:20ish. It's 3:20 on 420, man. And I have another photo for you. Here we go. And it reads, this is a very sobering statistic, by the way. The number of refugees that have poured out of Ukraine since the beginning of the Russian invasion has now surpassed 5 million. This came from the UN. Out of the 5,034,439, I mean, damn, they were specific, right? That have fled, more than 2.8 million have ended up in Poland, according to UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Now, wait a minute. You know there are 5,034,439 total, but you couldn't give me the exact number that have ended up in Poland. You were like more than 2.8 million? What the hell? What gives? Anyway, around 750,000 are in Romania, while close to 550,000 are in Russia. It added, we're on the ground in Ukraine and neighboring countries to provide assistance for people who have fled their homes. UNHCR, that's UN High Commissioner for Refugees, said on March 30th that 4 million people had fled Ukraine. So that means in, what, a month? Not even a month, about what, 21 days, they had an increase of an additional 20%. They're moving fast now, aren't they? In addition to the refugees, the UN says that more than 7 million people have been physically displaced within Ukraine. Bear in mind that the population of the entire country was only 44 million. Now, think about that. 5 million total is almost 1/8 of the entire population. But then you add in the 7 million displaced people. Now you're up to 12 million. Now you're up to over 25%. That's Staggering.
That's pretty bad.
Okay, so like, to put this into perspective, imagine if the entire population of the states of California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, and maybe Wyoming just disappeared. Now, some of those states you probably go, fuck yeah, see ya. But realistically, think of the number of people in all those states just vanished, left, ended up in Guadalajara. Mass exodus. That's a pretty shocking number, percentage-wise. Anyway, I wasn't talking about the total number, obviously, because it's 5 million, right? But like, if you took the percentage of the total population, it'd be like all those states combined, gone. That's a staggering statistic. And that doesn't even count the number of killed, wounded, or missing in action, or prisoners. So that number could easily be 30% of the total population. Refugees killed, missing, displaced. 30%. I think that's a conservative estimate. Moving right along. I've got this knot in the back of my neck, and it's driving me crazy because it's giving me a tension headache. So, bear with me if I groan and whine every once in a while. Let's see. Next story is around the same time, actually. About 3:20-ish. And do I have a photo for you here? I sure do. So, this one here is the familiar green chair. That's what I've been calling it every time I see it. I'm like, okay, he's in the same place because it's the same chair. 3:21 p.m. Ukrainian time. I just got up. Realistically, it's 8:21 my time. I just woke up. Like, all this had happened before I got up. So, 3:21 p.m. Ukraine time, Kyiv. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that it is, quote, unfair that he is forced to repeatedly ask allied nations for security assistance when those countries have the arms they need just sitting in storage. If we had access to all the weapons we need, which our partners have, and which are comparable to the weapons used by the Russian Federation, we would have already ended this war, he said in a late-night address on Tuesday. That's why I emphasize the simple truth in literally every contact with the world leaders of the democratic world, in all negotiations and in all interviews. It is unfair that Ukraine is still forced to ask for what its partners have been storing somewhere for years. Zelensky argued that Ukraine has proven its military capabilities are superior to Russia's, despite the sheer number of military Moscow has offered up in comparison to Kyiv. Russia has about 900,000 soldiers in active military service across all of its forces, compared to Ukraine's 196,600. Though Russia's army is only estimated to be about twice the size of Ukraine's, with the Russian army consisting of 280,000 soldiers compared to Ukraine's 125,600. In addition, Russia has 2 million in reserves, while Ukraine has about 900,000 reservists. Zelensky has repeatedly argued that he is not getting the type of security assistance he needs to effectively end the war with Russia. Moscow has launched a second offensive in the eastern Ukraine after Russian forces failed to take the capital. The concentrated campaign in the Donbass is expected to be even more brutal than the previous near 8 weeks of war that has plagued the country. If they have the weapons that Ukraine needs now, if they have the ammunition that we need here and now, it is their moral duty, first of all, to help protect freedom. Help save the lives of thousands of Ukrainians, he says. The U.S., which has provided $2.6 billion in security assistance for Ukraine, held talks with top allies Tuesday to discuss the ongoing crisis and Kyiv's continued needs. A senior U.S. defense official said Tuesday that the U.S. would send Ukraine another 7 flights worth of military equipment over the next 24-hour period, and maintained that security officials are in constant contact with Ukraine on its needs. Now, I left a side note on this story. I don't think he's appealing directly to the United States at this point. I don't think he is. I think he realizes that there has been a conga line of uh, equipment flights leaving this country. He can't deny it. But maybe he is. I'm not really sure. What I do know is he's not getting very specific things he's asking for. Because I think I've said this several weeks now. The world never anticipated how to handle Ukraine winning the war. All they thought of is either did we stop the war, or did we push Russia out, or did Russia win the war? Those are the three scenarios that world leaders had considered. They never thought that the Ukrainians would be this resilient and fought back. So now he's trying to basically say, it's time for you to stop wondering when we're going to lose and start asking yourselves, what do they need that we can give them to win? Because they very well could. As long as Putin doesn't go nuclear, these people have a good chance of winning. That is, if they push Russia out and then continue to push Russia all the way to Moscow. Because, like I said before, if you kick the invaders out of your country, you have defended your country, correct. But you've only won half the war. The man in charge is still in charge, and he can always come back, and you have to go get him. And if you don't do that, then you forgot how to fight a war to win it too. Don't fall into the same trap the rest of the world has, President Zelensky. Fight it to win it. And go drag that little bald-headed bastard out of his little Duma and fucking put him on the end of a rope. Or shoot him with a T6. Shoot him with one of his own antiquated T-72s. With the main gun, of course. Not with the machine gun. Make it messy.
I don't know.
Strap him to a Kizzle.
I think the machine gun would be more appropriate with the,
No, because I mean that
No,
they
no, Swiss cheese. Swiss
they would
cheese.
just tell him, no, you're just copying North Korea with their AA cans.
Ah, come on.
That's why you strap him to that air-launched ballistic missile they got.
Mad Sexy says he can't hear anything. Can you guys in the chat hear everything? Like, make sure if you can hear something, say something, because obviously Mad Sexy can't hear us. For whatever reason. Pretty sure everything's working, though. I'll keep an eye on the chat after I put that.
Sounds
request
fine
out
to
there.
me.
Sounds fine to me. He just
Well,
needs
you
to
two are,
turn
yeah.
up.
No,
Yeah.
I'm on the live chat.
Okay. Probably not the Duma. Well, yeah, okay. You're probably right.
You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to keel haul Putin on a submarine.
Dive. See how long he can hold his breath.
Dive.
Give him an air hose that's only the size of like a coffee stirrer too.
Yeah, right?
All right, moving on. Let's see. Oh, so the next story I have for you is actually this is the one I chose for the story of the day. And here's a photo. It's two pictures side by side, by the way, if you didn't know. And no, that's not a Photoshop of the words on top of the building like a watermark. That is not it at all. That is actually projected against the building. So, 11:24 a.m. EST, Eastern time. But this is post facto. I think this happened last night. Vladimir Putin's war on Ukraine arrived on the doorstep of the Russian ambassador to the United Nations. The Ukrainian activist group defiantly bathed his Manhattan townhouse in the blue and yellow colors of the Ukrainian flag and anti-Vladimir Putin slogans as a protest against Putin's horrific assault on the Ukrainian people. The message is to show that Ukrainians are not afraid and will find any Russian official, even if they're trying to hide. This came from Artur Zagurov. Okay, so yeah, they're saying they can hear me. Zagurov is a Ukrainian neurosurgeon and is now a New York-based activist with the pro-Ukrainian group Razom for Ukraine. The group projected the Ukrainian flag on the front facade of the red brick Georgian-style mansion on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That is the official residence of the Russian UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia. FNH is here. The phrases hashtag Putin is a war criminal and hashtag Zelensky is a hero were also projected onto the mansion's exterior just after Nebenzia had arrived. He remained inside in the third-floor library, so obviously that's where they aimed the projector. The message to Nebenzia would be, Mr. Nebenzia, stop lying. You lie too much, and too many things have happened because of your lies. Be a man and speak out, said Zagurov. Razom for Ukraine provides medical supplies and assistance to the besieged Ukrainian people and has held demonstrations in New York City against the war. More than 12 of its members gathered across the street from the townhouse on East 75th Street on Tuesday night and used a handheld projector to light up the building. Sidebar. You know what I love about this story? The guy who wrote this story is doing the thing I said that the Ukrainians shouldn't have done about the Azovstal steel plant. He spelled out where it was and gave the reader the exact address. In case you want to go and, project something on the building, like, I don't know, wet wads of toilet paper with poo in it or something, like spackle the side of the house. Anyway, let's see, where did I leave off? I'm very glad that we came to his house because he is one of the most evil spreaders of propaganda, said Razom member Irina Paliashvili about Putin's ambassador. Paliashvili, an American and Ukrainian-based lawyer, was able to leave Kyiv just as the war began. He represents an evil regime and he promotes an evil regime, so he himself is evil, she says. I think that it is crucial that these people understand that they are being watched by the world and they cannot get away with this criminal, barbaric war that they wage against Ukraine. Nebenzia has been branded as Putin's puppet by critics for his loyal defense of the invasion and continued denials at the UN Security Council meetings on Russian atrocities, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. He branded the killings of citizens in Bucha as a staged provocation and a false flag attack. He has continued to blame Ukrainian President Zelensky and Ukrainians for starting the war. He has used the Russian veto in the Security Council to block a resolution that criticizes his government as he continues to push Putin's propaganda. Razom for Ukraine is also calling for Russia to be expelled from the Security Council because of their crimes. I thought they were already. I guess they never voted on it. Zagurov has wrestled with the images from his home country that were caused by Putin and his government, and he cannot come to terms with the mass destruction and killing. If those were aliens who would do that, I can understand. But when humans do the same thing to humans, that's despicable and disgusting, and I cannot find the words that I am allowed to say to express my feelings. Nebenzia was seen at the government residence. He did not emerge from the townhouse during the Razom protests, but arrived shortly before it had begun. The ambassador is chauffeured to and from work by his driver in a late-model black Mercedes. Again, the writer's doxing this guy for the world. He was also seen, they've also seen a chef deliver daily food and supplies in a minivan with Russian diplomatic plates, and a housekeeper and other staff enter and exit the building. A sleek Ducati motorcycle has at times been parked behind its locked gate. Like, this is all TMI, right? Like, this is stalkerish almost. Anyway, while previous pro-Ukraine street demonstrations have targeted the Russian UN mission office complex on nearby East 67th Street, see, he's still doing it, and a Russian diplomatic apartment building in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, again, still doxing, this is the first time that that message was brought directly to the ambassador's house. Moscow bought the elegant mansion in the exclusive neighborhood for $35 million back in 2008. The real estate history blog, Daytonian in Manhattan, reported that the building dated back to 1892 and was once owned by a descendant of a signer of the Declaration of Independence. In 1915, the mansion became known as the R. Horace Gallatin House, after its patrician owner, who is a descendant of Elbridge Gerry, a founding father who not only signed the Declaration of Independence, but also later served as President James Madison's vice president. Gallatin, I think it's Gallatin, because it almost looks like gelatin that's misspelled, but it's Gallatin. Was also the great-grandson of Albert Gallatin, who served as Treasury Secretary under Presidents Madison and Thomas Jefferson, and was a U.S. Senator and Congressman from Pennsylvania. Albert Gallatin was sent to St. Petersburg, Russia in 1813 to negotiate the end of the War of 1812. There are no outward signs that the mansion is the official residence of the Russian ambassador. Unlike other foreign government properties in Manhattan, there's no flag indicating what country the building belongs to, no brass plaque with the nation's name on it, and even the pair of standard no-standing parking signs flanking either side of the building's front curb are not the usual diplomatic parking zone signs that would prevent ordinary New Yorkers from parking there. Observers believe that this was all done to conceal the true identity of the home's resident. Similar protests supporting Ukraine have been staged around the globe and at other Russian government properties. In London, for instance, a group of journalists projected the Ukrainian flag onto the Russian embassy to protest the killings of reporters covering the war. In Lisbon, pro-Ukrainian activists did the exact same, shining the flag on the front of the embassy in Portugal. In Washington, D.C., a large Ukrainian flag was unfurled in front of the Russian embassy, and an image of the flag was projected onto that building. In Lithuania, protesters dyed the small lake in front of the Russian embassy in Vilnius red, naming it the Lake of Blood. That's bold, right? An Olympic swimmer swam through the red-colored waters, and others floated in it to represent dead Ukrainian civilians who had fallen victim to Putin's horrors. Putin is a killer and a war criminal. Everyone knows that, Zagorov said. Zelensky's a hero. Our president is indeed a hero. Polyevshvili called Putin a war criminal who is probably something very close to Hitler and to the Nazi regime. So she just broke Godwin's law. As the members of Razom for Ukraine wrapped up their silent protest, they quietly sang the Ukrainian national anthem. As their voices filled the soft Manhattan night, they all suddenly shouted, "Slava Ukraini!" and "Glory to Ukraine" several times.
Here I am, Slava.
There was no response from anyone in the mansion. Shocker. That's a long story. I had to edit that down. It was actually about twice as long as that.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It was pretty big, but the guy who wrote it did a really good job, so I wanted to cover it because I found it pretty fascinating. It was like a history report, a docs report. You know, it had everything. We all got to laugh, we got to cry, people got to swim in a lake of blood, that kind of thing. Maybe they should have just used real blood, and just, dump a couple of tankers full of pig blood from a slaughterhouse or something. That would have been symbolic. Especially with that war pigs thing we talked about earlier. Anyway, moving right along. Let me see, what was the timestamp on that? Okay, so it's about 2 hours later. And do I have a photo of this one? Is this the Germany story? It is the Germany story. And this creature here, I don't know how I feel about what I'm looking at when I see her picture. I'm conflicted. I'm quite conflicted. Anyway, 5:30 p.m. Ukrainian time. Or Berlin time, I guess. Germany says that it has maxed out its ability to send arms to Ukraine on Wednesday and instead pledged to provide training to Ukrainian forces and maintain its equipment. While other partners supply artillery, we will help with training and maintenance. This came from German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock. That's the girl in the picture there. Baerbock's renewed Germany's support for Baltic states in a 3-day trip to Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, but reportedly claimed that Germany's armed services have said it can no longer supply weapons from its own reserves. Germany will continue, or to look to continue helping the war effort by providing spare parts and, maintenance work, essentially. German leadership has faced repeated criticism at home, and I'm glad you're here, Mike, because this part's for you.
Okay.
German leadership has faced repeated criticism at home and abroad for its hesitancy to send significant support to Ukraine, notoriously once offering up to 5,000 helmets in the lead up to the invasion. Here, have some helmets.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But hey, remember, they did send night vision.
Were they attached to those helmets?
I don't know. But,
Scheisse.
Yeah.
Though Baerbock
My
claimed
God.
Wednesday that Berlin has delivered... Yeah, did you like how I snuck that in there?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Though Baerbock claimed Wednesday that Berlin has delivered anti-tank weaponry and Stangers... yeah, I said Stangers. Without publicly announcing it. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz attempted to counter criticisms Tuesday over Berlin's decision not to provide more advanced equipment to Kyiv as Ukraine prepares for another major offensive in its eastern regions. Ukraine continues to have our full solidarity and support. At the same time as heads of state and government, it's our duty to prevent the war from spreading to other countries. Therefore, NATO does not want to and cannot intervene directly in the war. Scholz said that Germany will continue to provide defensive aid where it can, but alleged its equipment stocks are now maxed out. The German Chancellor engaged in talks with top allies like the US, officials from the EU and NATO, along with France, the UK, and Canada Tuesday, to discuss continued support for Ukraine. Germany will reportedly work with other nations on increasing their defensive aid and getting Soviet-era arms to Ukraine, as its forces are already trained on this form of weaponry. Scholz said that in Berlin, along with its Western allies, agreed Tuesday that it only made sense to send Ukraine arms that it could immediately deploy without any further training. Now, when I read that last part, she said that they will work repeatedly with other nations on increasing their defensive aid in getting Soviet-era arms to Ukraine. Does that mean they're going to start, digging into the Bavarian mountains where they were hiding, all the art and stolen treasures from all over Europe and find those caches of, I don't know, old Russian Dushkas and PPSHs and DP-28 machine guns and that, warehouse full of T-34s that they probably stole? That's what it kind of sounded like to me. Oh, look, we finally found this underground bunker, and it just happens to have a shitload of Joseph Stalin IS-3 tanks. You guys can have them. We don't need them. We might have to, pour 15 the absolute hell out of them because they're rusty piles of shit now. But details, whatever. Anyway. I think the reason I have such a hard time with that picture is because she sort of looks like a porn star from 10 years ago. I don't know. I can't remember her name anymore. It's very weird. Moving on. 5:45-ish, 5:45-ish p.m. Moscow.
Okay.
We're in Moscow now. I think the next two stories come out of Moscow. I'll make sure if I have a picture.
Not Moscow.
Oh yeah, Moscow. Oh yeah, I called this one the Crumbling Castle. So, here's the photo. There you go.
Kremlin?
No, well, maybe.
With a K?
You'll see. A small but growing number of high-ranking officials within the Kremlin are starting to question Vladimir Putin's decision to go to war with Ukraine as the invasion nears the 2-month mark, a report had said Wednesday evening. The critics...
Fired. They're getting fired.
Oh, yeah. The critics, who occupy top posts in Russia's government and state-run businesses, believe the invasion was a catastrophic mistake that will set the country back for years, if not decades. Yeah. Sources say that the decision to invade Ukraine was made by Putin alone and just a handful of other Russian elites, such as Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, remember that guy that was missing for the longest time? Russian General Valery Gerasimov, another general that was missing for a while, and Nikolai Patrushev, who heads the Security Council of Russia. As the wars dragged on, with Russian military losses mounting, Putin has continued to dismiss warnings from other officials about the economic costs of the war, and has been telling them that even though Russia will pay a large cost, the West has left him no choice but to attack Ukraine. You left me no choice. What was I supposed to do? Anyway, some of the officials also have been growing more concerned about the potential of Putin using nuclear weapons if faced with failure in the war. The report says that support for Putin remains high among Russia's elite, with many buying into the Kremlin narrative that Russia will still overcome sanctions imposed by the US and its allies. Still, more and more top insiders have come to believe that Putin's commitment to continue the invasion will doom Russia to years of isolation and heightened tension that will leave his country and its economy crippled, its security compromised, and its global influence gutted. Now, if you remember, a while back, I had very accurately, despite the fact that I don't know shit about war, very accurately said that this was a unique moment in history where we, the Western world, the non-Russian world, had a chance to put down the communist dog of Russia and its stigma of the Soviet Union once and for all. You know, we could put it down once and for all. Because their military is obviously inept, right? They've taken way too many losses for such a small country that they thought they were going to take over in 3 days. They look like fools. They are led by idiots.
They haven't been in a real conflict since Chechnya.
Yeah. More or less.
And even then, that didn't go good for them either.
Yeah.
It didn't go good for them either, but eventually Chechnya, capitulated.
Yeah, and they became buddy-buddy with them.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is, this is a very unique moment in history, because the world, for a century almost, right, thought that there were two superpowers in the world, the United States and Russia. And there is now a moment in our history where that can be reduced down to one. Because Russia is a joke now, militarily.
Yeah.
They have the boogeyman stigma of nuclear arsenals. Sure. They've always had that. But if they never use them and they get crushed, it'll end the stigma of Russia for the remainder of eternity.
Right.
Because their current population, their youth, right? The next generation of Russian people never grew up in communism. They want no part of it. This is the whims and will of decrepit old men. It really is. Look, the people in charge.
You also have to look at, you know how before at the beginning of this stuff you were waiting for China to go and attack Taiwan and they haven't done it?
No, because after 3 days of trying to take Kyiv and watching their 40-mile convoy get stalled for 12 days,
Yeah.
China probably shit themselves going, wait a minute, we thought that
We
those
ain't ready
guys...
for this.
Yeah, they thought that Russia was the second world superpower also. And they thought this was going to be a cakewalk. They thought they were going to have the Ruski version of America's shock and awe, right? And nothing was further from the truth. And China was like, Jesus Christ, we backed the wrong horse.
Well, and I know you disagree with me when I say this, but I'm telling you right now, the fallout that Russia has taken during this whole facade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think China is thinking twice about invading Taiwan because they have more to lose than Russia did.
Absolutely, they're the world's manufacturing facility of cheap labor.
About attacking Taiwan, they're going to wait.
Well, think about it like this.
And you didn't agree with me at the beginning about this, but now that
no,
you
it's not
China
that. It's about how they were not going to succeed or how they were going to fail. So think of it this way. Yeah. And I'm gonna give the person the respect he deserves, the office the respect it deserves. But President Joe Biden has proven that America is willing to cut off its own nose to spite its own face when it came to energy independence. It was a unilateral decision by one idiot, and it has put this country into a geopolitical tailspin when it comes to energy independence, when it comes to foreign policy and diplomacy. Like, one man made a complete hash of it, right? Biden makes America look stupid. Russia, or Putin, makes Russia look inept. It's two sides of the same retarded coin. Two decrepit, crippled, retarded old men, ruining the reputations of the two world superpowers. But China, on the other hand, they feel like they're a major player now. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm not denying that they could be, right? Because it's a country that's 1/7 the entire population of the world. You can't deny the sheer numbers, right? Russians proved that in 1943. When they couldn't defeat the Tiger tank, they dogpiled on it with like 7 T-34s, and they were like, "Oh, we win in sheer numbers," right? You can't deny that.
Tons of Shermans instead.
You throw enough bodies at a problem, you'll overcome the problem. You know, they prove that. So China's kind of like that. They're like, look, we have over 1 billion people. We are the manufacturer of cheap labor for the whole world. Their wealth is built on trade deficit debts by the whole world, depending on China for cheap labor and goods. Here's the difference. They're scared shitless because I think they're starting to understand, because of watching Biden cut his own nose to spite his face about energy, that the world would be willing to take a recessionary hit to start
manufacturing.
Yes, to start domestic production. Sure, things will start to cost a little bit more, and wages will have to be a little higher, and the economy will grow incredibly slow while that starts to grow.
Right.
And start to take shape. But the world would cut its own nose off in terms of cheap labor to put China back into the feudal ages if they had to. Because think about it like this.
Taiwan.
If you look at the big cities in China, they are marvelous to look at, technologically speaking. They do look the part, right? But if the world stops funneling money to China and nobody buys from China, and China's exports have nowhere to go, they're not making any more money anymore. It's all internal economics.
And that's why I said they have more to lose if they attack.
Yes, and I think that's part of it. Number one, he can't lean on Russia militarily. And number two, he can't take the financial hit. There's just no fucking way.
China can't take.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. China can't take the hit.
One other thing that most other people, that even probably China doesn't realize. They have a very large outstanding debt compounded by about 80 years of interest.
Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. China's debt to the world is nothing in comparison to the world's debt to China when it comes to trade deficit.
Their debt to the United States.
They'll just default on it. See, that's the thing about national debt. You see, I maintain that our country's national debt is artificial. It's a debt to ourselves, right? Because
most of it is.
Anytime the government needs something, they get it anyway. They rubber stamp it for themselves anyway, right? So it's like when you hear government officials and politicians tell you that they're trying to save your money so your grandchildren don't have to pay for it, they're full of shit. Because the fact of the matter is anything they want and they approve, they get. So they don't care what it costs.
Every time they open their mouths. So
they just rubber stamp it, right? Like they'll just say, "Look, I need Bath Ironworks to build me another Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier." And they're like, "Okay, well that'll be $8 billion." And they're like, "Cool, we're good for it." So Bath Ironworks builds the ship, and all of a sudden Bath Ironworks has an $8 billion credit with the federal government. It's like they're getting paid. They're just putting the debt at the feet of the taxpayer, saying you have to owe this because we needed this. Instead of calling it
No,
national
for the
debt,
most
they
part,
should just call it national operational costs and write it off because we're not
for the
paying
most
for it.
part, they're borrowing against the fucking Social Security.
See, that was the one thing that they should have never been allowed to touch. And yet they got
They're
their
not
grubby
allowed to.
little liberal paws on it.
Thing.
They've done it
What
like,
they did.
I think 6 times throughout history. You're not supposed to touch Social Security. If you look at the way the Social Security system in this country worked at its inception, it was a pyramid scheme. But it was a beneficial
Yeah,
pyramid scheme for the
still is.
working class because the people who designed it, they knew that the national population would always trend upward, which means every generation would outgrow the generation that's coming. Like the generation going into the workforce would always outgrow the generation coming out. So, for instance, if 1,000,000 people went into the workforce in 1910, and then 63 years later they were getting ready to retire, 1,000,000 people were coming out, but 40 million were going in 60 years later. 40 million people were paying into the 1 million, pension. And,
Well, it
I'm picking
also had
one
to
end
do
and
with
the other, but every year 2 with year 64, year 3 with year 65. You see, it kept growing. It should have never
also
bankrupted, ever.
also has to do with
You brain farted, didn't you? He did. Look. Somebody stick another quarter in Scott. He just stalled out.
Scott, look over there in Makarov.
Either that or maybe he got a phone call.
He might have got.
No, I am
There you
perfectly fine.
Okay, what happened? You stalled
go.
out.
I have no idea.
Okay.
No,
you're back.
it also had to do with lifespan.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, they also
Because
knew
we
that
live on
quality of life
average
got
about
better.
20 or 30 years longer versus
Yeah.
when it was initially started.
For the main population. That's correct. And I think if they funny enough, I think they followed the science and they realized that people were living longer. So yeah, the system should have never been touched. Anyway, the point is, you're right. China's scared shitless because they don't have a military bro like they thought they did, and they can't afford the sanctions and the economic hit because the world will stop working with China. And then China will only have domestic economy. Like Russia might
And
buy
it'll
from
be fine.
China and China might buy from Russia, but nobody will buy outside of those two.
From
Like,
either of them.
yeah. So it's like, well, I don't know. I still want Zenico. But but anyway, the point is yeah, China would be so isolated that their economy would just be within itself. And sure, it could sustain for a few years because, they're really good at stealing everyone's intellectual property rights, and they'll just be like, "Well, fuck you. We still have our Star Trucks and our fucking Apple iPhones." And you just be like, "Wait a minute, that's not even actually no, you know what? They would tell us to go fuck ourselves. They would just stop production on Apple products because that's where they're all made. So Apple would have to pull out. That would be the first major piece to fall.
Apple already is.
Have they completely left? Because iPhones are still made there.
They haven't completely left, but they are shifting production back to the US actually.
Good. You know what the biggest insult about China is?
Or to Taiwan.
Yeah. But you know what the biggest insult about the whole China thing is? Is there is a microchip shortage, right? We've been hearing about this for 2 or 3 years now. Like vehicle sales or vehicle production had been delayed because of microchip shortages. Fact of the matter is, all the tooling that China uses to produce microchips is made in the United States. We sell them the tooling, and yet we don't even use our own tools. So we could do it, we just don't, because cheap labor. Anyway, good. That was a good tangent, actually, because you're
Sorry
right.
about
No, you're right. You're right about China's scared shitless. I think it's for multiple reasons, but they're all valid reasons. For sure.
No. I get that there's more than just what I originally thought, because I originally thought that once they saw what happened with Russia, they would think twice. And now it seems more apparent that unfortunately, one side of it, I am right about it, and
Yeah.
it's weird being right.
It's just the thing is the military thing is what scares them the most.
Yeah.
They thought Russia was still the great Iron Bear, and they're not.
Iron Bear, yeah.
They're just
and they're not.
just not.
They're just not, because Well, all the Cossacks moved to the Ukraine and created Ukraine. So what's left? You've got all the other
Chechens.
Russians.
Chechens.
You got Chechens.
You got Chechens, and you got, rotten tooth barley farmers. Yep, I went back
Well,
against barley.
You've got
that explains a lot why Ukraine does not like Russia.
And while
Yeah.
Siberians are cold
Cossacks.
and hard, they are not the warriors the Cossacks were.
No, that's why they had to conscript Mongolians.
Mongolians.
What the fuck?
What the hell are Mongolians doing here?
I don't know, but they're finding Mongolian IDs on dead soldiers in Ukraine. So it's just like, I thought that guy's eyes were a bit too slanted. What the,
Right?
Anyway, yeah, it's true. They're just. Let me pose this question for you, the audience, and you, my panel. Okay. Do you honestly think that this war would be 56 days old if Russia had no nuclear weapons? Are you kidding me?
Oh, the United States would have crushed them. In a week.
Ukraine would have mobilized everybody in the country and marched right into Moscow.
Right.
They would have went in with everything they had and just crushed Moscow. But it's because of the nuclear boogeyman that that's the thing. If I was Volodymyr Zelensky, I would be pissed off because the only thing that's stopping the Russians from being destroyed right now in Moscow is the threat of nuclear weapons. And what's the one thing that NATO told Ukraine they had to do to even be considered for membership?
Get rid of
Nuclear
theirs.
disarmament. They gave up their trump card, and now that's the one thing that they would have needed to prevent this. And it's the one thing that Russia has to prevent their total annihilation. How
Did you
fucked
hear
is
what
that?
happened today in Russia, though? It
How
was later this
fucked is that, though?
Later this evening, and this ties into this.
Hmm.
Later this evening, I got a news article thing
Hmm.
saying that Russia just tested a nuclear capable. missile.
Wait. I got that. It's
You got
in the
that?
story.
You got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
I know where
Right.
you're going with that. I even have the name of it.
Let's segue into that because it's same conversation.
It's the okay. It's the story after this one. So let me blow through this one quickly, and then we'll get to that one for sure.
Right, because I want to talk about this one.
We will absolutely. All right. So here's the photo for my next story. It's 1:34 Eastern time. So we're back in New York, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's New York. Maybe it's I don't know. Fuck it. It's Eastern time for sure though. 2 Republican senators have urged Secretary of State Antony Blinken to reopen the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv to, quote, symbolically affirm Washington's commitment to Ukraine. In an obtained letter, Senators Jerry Moran, why the hell am I having a hard time reading that? Jerry Moran of Kansas and Steve Daines of Montana reasoned that Russia has withdrawn its troops from the area after failing to take the capital city. With Ukraine's successful defense of Kyiv and Russia's subsequent withdrawal of forces from the areas surrounding the capital, we encourage you to fully open the U.S. Embassy without delay, the senators had written. America's restored diplomatic presence in Kyiv will enhance cooperation with a democratic partner as it wages an existential defense and symbolically affirm our nation's commitment to Ukraine's territorial sovereignty. Fucking word salad. At least 17 nations have reopened their embassies in Kyiv after Russian troops withdrew from areas to the north and east of the capital late last month. Spain announced this week that it will join nations like Austria, Belgium, France, the Czech Republic, Italy, Turkey, Lithuania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Portugal, and the European Union in reestablishing its diplomatic missions in Ukraine. Moran and Daines noted that the threat Russia continues to pose in Ukraine is significant, but argued the U.S. has maintained working embassies in war-torn nations before. Moran says that as a member of the State and Foreign Operations Appropriations Subcommittee, he takes very seriously the safety of embassy staff, but the senator noted that he had the opportunity to meet with embassy staff on a recent trip to the Ukrainian-Polish border and said he was very impressed by their dedication and patriotism. As we see France, Italy, and other allies move to reopen their embassies in Kyiv, our nation and the Ukrainian people will be well served with our own diplomatic return to the embassy in Ukraine's capital. The senators called on Blinken to provide a plan on staffing details and how the U.S. will restore pre-war level embassy operations. Our continued absence in Kyiv, no matter how prudent up to now, signals a lack of confidence in Ukraine's ability to defend itself and the diplomatic missions under its protection. The duo wrote this letter to Blinken Tuesday evening. Resuming normal embassy operations at once will reinforce the importance of diplomacy and America's full support for Ukraine whole and free. So it's a symbolic gesture saying we should flip the lights back on because all these other countries did it in the same capital. It's bad enough that world leaders from all over walk the streets of Kyiv and our president's too chicken shit to do so. Like they're calling us out, or we're calling ourselves out at this point. We're supposed to be allies, right? And being an ally is making appearances, and we're not doing that. All right, so moving on, because this is the part that Mike really wants to talk about. And it's actually my second to last story for the day. I'm surprised we made it through, because, I mean, I think we might be able to do this in 90 minutes, which is fantastic. So, 7:37 Moscow time. And I have a photo for you. Very phallic. Very phallic. Russia's defense ministry announced Wednesday that it has conducted the first test launch of its new Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile, a nuclear weapon that Vladimir Putin says will provide food for thought for those who try to threaten our country. The ministry said that the missile was launched Wednesday from the Plesetsk launch facility in northern Russia, and its practice warheads hit designated targets at the Kura firing range on the far eastern Kamchatka Peninsula. This truly unique weapon will strengthen the combat potential for our armed forces, reliably ensure Russia's security from external threats, and provide food for thought for those who, in the heat of frenzied aggressive rhetoric, try to threaten our country, Putin said. The Sarmat is a heavy missile intended to replace the Soviet-made Voyevoda missile, which was codenamed Satan by the West. Putin and his officials said it's capable of penetrating any prospective missile defense. It has no analogs in the world and won't have for a long time to come. Putin also called Wednesday's reported launch a big, significant event for Russia's defense industry. Russia relies on land-based ICBMs as the core of its nuclear deterrent and is counting on the Sarmat for decades to come. So, we talked about the Satan and the Satan II missile. The Sarmat is what's next. It's what comes next. And by his description, it's basically a supersonic stealth missile, meaning you're not going to know it's coming. At least that's what he says. Now, whether or not it's true, this is one of those things where you're not going to know until one gets launched and hits something. So you don't really want to call this out, but you also don't want this guy to run his mouth either. So it's like, Nothing would have been cooler than to watch that missile test because our U.S. intel was so good that we knew exactly when they were going to do it. The ultimate insult would have been this missile got launched, started its launch, and then all of a sudden exploded because a missile intercepted it. And then, like, you just hear, America, fuck yeah. Because, that would have just neutered their new super weapon. Like, could you imagine what would have happened to Adolf Hitler if the first V-2 launch, like, got 100 feet off the ground and then was intercepted by a rocket and blown up? Like, he would just be like, ach mein Gott, there goes my Wunderweapon. What if we did that to Russia with that missile? Opportunity lost. Or, what he's saying is true, and we can't see it coming. And that's scary. Because think about this. They have this missile. They have the Belgorod, which is that doomsday fucking submarine. He's doing Wunderweapons right now, and now he's starting to show them off as a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
And
whether
they'll never be able to produce them in any
you
significant
say
number.
that, but they still did it.
T-14 Armada.
Doesn't matter. You don't need
Weapons.
tanks in a
They have
nuclear
less
war.
than 100.
Right,
Those
but
T-14s, you know, invading Ukraine. Oh wait, they're using T-90s, upgraded T-72s.
yes, and
Yeah.
none of those matter with a ballistic missile war, does it? You don't need tanks in a ballistic missile war. Matter of fact, a lot of people were saying for like the last 15 to 20 years, basically tanks are obsolete. I mean, once upon a time, battleships were ruler of the seas. Naval aircraft made the battleship obsolete, right? The aircraft carrier took over because it delivered the aircraft, which made battleships obsolete. And it's like, think about land wars now. Tanks are useless because of javelins. Let's be honest, right? They're fucking useless.
Well,
Saint
Russian
Javelin, well, any tank, Saint Javelin has laid waste to the world, and her soft, tender, ballistic bosom has made the tank obsolete, right? Let's be real. But ICBMs and undetectable nuclear, boomers, that's the new thing. Tomahawk
undetectable
missiles, stuff like
boomers
that.
was always a thing.
Well, yeah, I know, but they've
That
got
changes
one now.
nothing.
They've got a good one now, a scary good one. And it's like, that's the new face
Really?
of war.
They had 6 Typhoon submarines. They went and sat under the ice where we didn't dare go.
Yeah, that's true. But this thing is like, they call it the Doomsday Submarine. They don't call it that.
It's a
We
generation or two behind U.S. missile subs.
do. I don't think so, because they can't find the damn thing. It's already out in the ocean. And it's
No,
huge.
they won't admit they can find the thing.
Nah, Sosis would brag about it, honestly. Because
No, they
nothing.
wouldn't.
Yeah, they would. Nothing would stop Russia faster than producing a second one when they said we can
You've
see
never
the
heard
first
of
one.
Top Secret.
No, the point is this is a propaganda war now, right? So it's like Russia goes, check out this new weapon.
Which is why you can't believe a goddamn thing Russia says about their capabilities.
You
Because
love
they're
to
gonna
underestimate the
obviously-
enemy. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to
No,
underestimate the
I
enemy.
refuse to overestimate the enemy.
I don't overestimate them either. I read the statistics on what this thing is capable of, and it's just like, okay, if it can do that, it needs to be treated as a threat, right? And if you want to
yes.
neuter that threat,
Any more threat than any other ballistic missile
no.
submarine? No.
Listen. If you want to neuter the threat, and Russia goes, check out this new flagship submarine we built that you're scared shitless of, nothing would stop them faster because they said we're going to make 10 of these, and we'll go, really? Because we've been tracking this thing ever since you launched it. We already know what it looks like and what to find. They'd stop
Sean,
building it immediately because they're like, fuck, they already know how to find it.
the Belgorod.
No, they wouldn't.
The Belgorod submarine, it's actually an old Soviet design. Okay, because
Yeah.
they built it. It was originally built in '92, and then they went and refitted it and
Yeah, it's got like a
improved it.
project name on top of one
It-
specific
it
one
was
that they
originally
modified.
Project 949A.
Yes.
Okay.
Like you and me and
It was a
Scott,
Soviet sub. It came out of the ashes of the Soviet Union. It was
we
like the last
saw
thing
the
they did.
sub brief just like you did.
Yeah.
It's just they took one and they plus P'd it, and it's pretty spooky. Whereas we've
And
got
all you do is you literally
Pretty
dedicate
spooky,
1 or 2
but-
fucking
but
fast attack submarines to
The
sit
drones
outside
are
its
built
home
on a
port
Soviet design.
and wait for the
Had
fucker.
since the
it's already
90s at least.
launched.
Yeah, and what's to make you think that there wasn't at least 1 or 2 U.S. attack subs waiting for it?
Well, because if this thing is as scary as it is, right? What kills propaganda faster is saying we already
I'll
know about
guarantee
it.
you, if it's as scary as you think it is, the U.S. Navy was there waiting for it.
That's
Mhm.
that's the thing though. You've seen the video. You've heard the guy talk about it. He's Navy, okay? He's Navy. He answers to
he was
Navy analysts.
Navy.
They're scared of it. They're
Yeah,
even
he's
scared of
Navy
it. Their assessment is
sonar
scared
guy.
of it. Not just him. The people he answers to, like, they don't like it. Because it obviously is something that is decent enough to put them on edge. And it's like, okay, here's a good example. China says we have our own domestically produced submarine. We call it the Han, right? And on paper, it seems okay, but even statistically speaking, our own Navy analysts said we got nothing to worry about, right? They saw the Han, they're like, we got nothing to worry about. And then active Navy on patrol are like, yeah, they confirmed it. They were like, you got nothing to worry about. We can hear this thing, you know, hundreds of miles away. It's so loud that, you know, we have to turn down our fucking earphones because it's so damn loud, right? Like, from the get-go, everyone said this thing was no big deal. This
You
submarine,
are aware of exactly what SOSUS was, because you mentioned that, right?
yes, but that's the whole point. The Han
You
is
are
not a
aware
threat.
that we were tracking Russian submarines for decades
Yes,
without them knowing about it.
yes, but when
So
you've
you
got
are aware that SOSUS has actually been turned over to civilian researchers.
yes, that's how they helped find the ARA San Juan. As a matter of fact, they triangulated two different listening stations to find it.
I think the United States Navy gave up SOSUS, control SOSUS, without having a replacement.
I don't know if it's I wouldn't necessarily call it a replacement. I think better yet, it's more ears on the ground make for a better system. You know what I mean? Like, they have it. Why don't we just have a bunch of people operating it, working in concert together to make it more
SOSUS
effective?
is using like 40-year-old technology.
It's still effective.
It's analog. Yeah, it's somewhat effective nowadays. But it's analog.
The thing is in the
The new
ocean, there's
system
only
is
so
all
much you can do.
digital.
But I mean, in the ocean, there's only so much you can do, technologically speaking, right? It's not like you can't use light beams to do targeting underwater because light refracts like crazy underwater. Sonar can only do so much. Now, detection-wise, sure. Silence-wise, absolutely. But like, it's almost like accurizing ARs over time, right? It's like the technology's still more or less the same. They just keep making it more and more refined. That kind of thing. Either way,
Actually,
what I was driving
they do
at
have
is
some laser communications that work underwater.
sure. But the whole point is when something new comes out, there's two ways to combat it. One, you just go and find it, track it, and obliterate it. Two, you either assess it and say, yes, it's dangerous, then you go and track it and destroy it, or you discredit it immediately because you're like, no, this is why we're not worried about it. That's why John Kirby goes up there every day at 3:30 at the Pentagon to give you a briefing, because he'll tell you if it's not classified, he'll say, yeah, we're not worried about that. Here's why. Or, okay, this is a cause for concern. Here's why. And it's like when the Chinese came out with their nuclear subs, immediately the world was like, we got nothing to worry about. It's loud, it's super noisy, it's not that technologically advanced, but it's a nice try. When this thing came out, the world was put on edge. They were like, no, this thing's a doomsday weapon. Like, that's a very different response.
Honestly,
The only reason they're referring to it as a doomsday weapon
is because of what's
the
on board.
carries that parasite nuclear-powered drone submarine.
Yeah,
That's
you know
the
what
only
we
reason
have in
they're
response
referring
though?
to it as a fucking
We've dropped these little like care packages all over the ocean floor. We have those too.
we have pre-positioned
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
packs
We
of
drop these things everywhere.
torpedoes all over the fucking place.
Yeah, it's like we've got something
Including
like that
probably
too.
outside their ports.
Well, you realize we also have something to. We do have something to combat the Belgorod.
We could just drain the
Yeah,
ocean. Well, if
No,
we were to believe Greta
Hold on.
Thunberg, we'll just drain the oceans.
No, don't listen to that retarded child. Listen. We are replacing all of our Ohio class submarines with the new Columbia class. Columbia
Yes,
class
but that's years out.
No, I think they've already got a couple done.
No, because they can't. They haven't even started the first one yet. They're doing. They just completed Virginia class Flight 4. They're just starting to build Virginia class Flight 5, which is another extension and improvement of the Virginia. It's gone through 4 different iterations. Now they're working on the 5th one, and they're going to build in tandem Flight 4s and Flight 5s in concert with the Australian Navy, because we sold them 3, I think. But no, we're still doing those. They can't start the next one until they finish this one. It's a contract. It's not going to start till 2035. And then on top of that, there's another submarine on top of that one coming out.
Well,
which is supposed to be smaller.
Listen, they've got the Belgorod. Great.
They only got one.
We also have a fleet of Ohio-class submarines, which can do the same thing.
Those are super old, though.
I know they're old, but remember, Germans had Tigers. We use Shermans. We still won.
Yeah. Okay. So you're describing the thing like I did with tanks, where you can beat them with sheer numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
And remember,
but the problem is you're talking about fast attack subs versus nuclear launch subs.
Okay, the Belgorod can launch nuclear weapons. So can the Ohio.
I don't know. I'm just not underestimating that one weapon. I'm not saying that everything the Russians make is scary. I'm saying that one is scary.
Not scary.
I'm saying that missile there is scary too.
I'm just saying you're putting too much importance on one submarine when we've got literally hundreds that can do the same thing.
Do you remember the movie The Wolf's Call? That came out like 2 years ago. 3 years ago? 2019? 3 years ago. The Wolf's Call, the French movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
That was what one sub can do. One is enough. It prompted a global response. One sub. One sub that only had one nuclear weapon on it. Or at least they thought it had one nuclear weapon on it. It fired off an empty shell, but it put the world on notice.
And the next thing I'm going to tell you is, you realize we are the first country to successfully use a submarine in war.
The British were the last, actually.
No, I think he said we were the first.
The first.
You're talking about that stupid thing
The
with the
turtle
long...
does not count.
He's talking about the one with the long stick mine on the end of it. The one that killed itself because it couldn't get away from its own weapon.
And they brought it back up and they sunk it again.
Then they reused it and sunk it again. Exactly.
But we used it successfully.
That's not a success when the crew dies.
It is for the Chinese.
No.
Did the target sink? If
Listen.
the target sink, it's a success, okay?
It indeed did. That's no better than Divine Wind.
Okay, listen.
That did a lot of damage.
Just because it sunk afterwards, that's also saying, oh, kamikaze pilots aren't useful at all.
They weren't. Kamikaze planes never sunk an aircraft carrier. They did a lot of damage to one, but they never one plane hitting a deck never took out an aircraft carrier. No.
I believe they did sink one of our light carriers.
No.
They did.
No,
Yeah,
we scuttled it after the fires were just too fucking hard to control and the thing listed over. I think you're talking about the Bogue. I think it was called the Bogue. Anyway. Moving on, because I got one story left, and we surpassed 90 minutes, and I said we was hoping I'd get us out of here in 90 minutes. And I'm pretty sure everyone in the audience is like, Jesus Christ, they're arguing like kids. Anyway. I like this. I like this. I just, you know what, I guess the one thing I can take away from that missile test is maybe it's not scary because maybe that one's super expensive and they can't produce it like Scott was saying about the T-14. What would make it scary?
That's exactly what it is.
What would make it really scary is if they said, we tested this missile successfully and it worked. Oh, and by the way, it's 20 times cheaper than the Satan missile that came before it. Then you have a real reason to be scared of it.
No, military equipment never gets cheaper.
No, it doesn't.
I don't know. Fucking maybe they got China to build it for them. They're the manufacturer of cheap labor.
I'll give you an example. An F-15 costs, when it was originally built, like $35 million.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now they're upwards of $60 million.
Okay, I'll give you a counterexample.
Basically the same airframe.
I'll give you a counterexample of a weapon that was made cheaper over time. 3D printed guns. Original gun expensive, 3D printed gun far cheaper.
Not reliable.
Huh? Well, the technology will catch up though.
Will not last.
No, that's bullshit because we were talking about it before we got on air. HRE, that Swiss company that makes like super high-end, like high-performance rims and shit for Lamborghinis and Aston Martins and everything, all those wheels are
Yeah.
3D printed now. You can't tell me they're not
Yeah.
reliable. That takes thousands of pounds of torque.
And have you looked at the price of those said
The
wheels?
machine was $3 million. Yes, the set of wheels was okay.
What's
4 to
the
5.
average cost of a set of those rims? 100 grand?
No, probably like 5 grand. 5, 6 grand.
Oh, I bet you they're 5 grand each.
Some of the fancier ones, yes. But the technology that made their wheels, like even their entry model wheels now, 3D printed. I mean, think about it like this. Once upon a time, you had to take steel wheels and you had to like cut them to shape, right? Now we have CNC machines. CNC operations made things far better and far cheaper, right? To say that this missile, what if this missile was made out of fiberglass and carbon fiber instead of other exotic materials like scandium or whatever? It could have got cheaper. Or it's lighter, or it's faster. You see what I'm saying? Like, that would make it scarier, though, wouldn't it? If they
Okay,
could
I'll
actually
give you
say
a
it was
better
20 times
example.
cheaper.
Chip shortage.
Yeah.
No one is going to sell chips to Russia at this point.
No.
No, yeah,
They
that's a
have
good
no
point.
domestic
That's a very
manufacturing.
good point. That's a very fair point. You're right. But what if they start
So they're
making
going to
their
have
own?
to try and get around those
You know, that's a
by going,
really good
setting up
question.
fake companies. It's going to increase the cost to procure shit. Just like little Rocket Man with his, what was it,
Huh.
Johnny Walker Blue?
Right.
Yeah, but he gets that
He
that
can't.
on trains.
He legally, North Korea can't buy that. They have to set up dummy companies to purchase that shit for him, which costs money.
There is there is a chip maker in Russia, Baikal Electronics. They do make their own chips. Now, whether or
Yeah,
not
but
they
are they
can,
good enough to be
yeah,
used
because
for that?
isn't the Baikal also the name of a weapon system that Russia employs?
Yeah,
So,
but that's a misnomer because it's like Fuji Heavy Industries.
well,
Just because
if the
they has the
military
same
contractor
name.
that makes the weapons also conglomerately owns the chip manufacturing, that's actually smart, right? You keep it in house.
Yeah, but do they have the capability of making the quality of chips that they need
It
for
just
something like that?
it
I
just
doubt it.
has to work.
Yeah, but it also has to be able to withstand, being a ballistic missile.
Well, yeah, we've all seen the beginning of K-19. We all saw them do the launch and then the stupid chip burned out. I get that. But you know what? Failure is the mother of invention, right? They're going to get it right eventually. And I guess you can say, how long is it going to take before they get it right? Well, maybe they've been doing it for the last 30 years and they finally got it right. All I'm saying is something could make that weapon scarier. And the big something is, oh yeah, by the way, we can make 20 of these for the cost of one of the last ones. That would make it
Yeah,
scarier.
you know how you were all up in arms about their so-called hypersonic air-launched ballistic missile? Did you catch that article I posted that we now have 2
No, I was hot and
hypersonic
bothered about.
scramjet-powered designs that work?
I was hot and bothered about
They are
the
still
shitball
relying on
torpedo.
ballistic. No, you've been up in arms about that fucking ballistic missile that they launched from the MiG-20,
Oh,
MiG-31
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
whatever
Yeah, yeah, I
in
know which one you're talking
Ukraine.
about. Yeah, yeah.
But essentially, you know what that is? That is a air-launched ballistic missile. We
Theirs?
pioneered that technology in the 70s. Yes, that's all that is.
We did.
It's nothing new. It's nothing scary. It's old tech.
What the hell was that thing called? Oh, the Kinzel missile.
Yeah, that's old tech. We did that in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah,
were the
but
one that pioneered that tech.
did we mass produce it?
Yeah.
Or did we just do it as a technical exercise and go, yeah, okay, we can do it, but it's really not cost effective? That seems more like what we would do.
We did it because that's how we came up with our first anti-satellite ballistic weapon.
Okay.
Which, ironically, was launched from an F-15.
Fine.
In the 70s.
So, saying that your enemy has something that we already had before doesn't detract from the fact that they have them and they're employing them. Like, the guy on the ground who
Yes,
gets hit by one
but they
doesn't
are
care 'cause he's dead.
also 40 years behind technologically on that shit.
Maybe it's not the fact that they're 40 years behind. Maybe they just, what is old is new again. Maybe they looked at that and go, no, that's a good idea. We should use that. That's not a bad thing all the time. I mean, okay, I'm going to give you the perfect quote from an Avengers movie. Sometimes the world needs a little old-fashioned, right? Like, do you remember Die Hard 4? Okay, what happened when there was a fire sale, or when there was an EMP or whatever?
Oh.
What did that one guy played by, was it? That's not Kevin James. What's the other guy's name? Fuck, I forgot. Anyway,
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith. Thank you. I'm glad you remembered that. He even said that he was like, wait, he's like, this old radio seems a little below your pay grade. He was like, hey man, that's the internet after the EMP strike, right? Maybe a little old-fashioned, not so bad. I mean, think about people who still cling on to ham radio. Ham radio is the internet if the internet ever gets taken down, isn't it? Shortwave radio, stuff like that. I mean, think about us in the 2A community. We talk about like prepping and all this other stuff all the time. Ham radio is a discussion that a lot of us talk about still. We have it on this server. We talk about it, just not very often, but yeah.
I'll make a point.
You've been trying to tell us that we don't have to be scared of Russia. I can tell you who is scared of Russia. Those poor bastards in Mariupol, because they're getting slaughtered wholesale. Nobody in Mariupol said, oh, we don't have to worry about them. Huh?
Because they're not a superior force.
Nobody in Mariupol stopped and goes, no, we don't have to worry about that. Nobody. Because they're getting killed. Like, we can do it from the comfort of our house halfway around the world, but they can't.
Knows the world over that if they attack the United States, they have just brought hell upon themselves.
Yeah, okay, so...
We have known numerous times, if you fuck with us, we will utterly destroy your country.
What is what you're saying any different than the Cold War nuclear boogeyman that the Soviet Union has been carrying as a reputation up until this war?
Because we can actually back it up.
It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, here I'll give you two examples of how the Russian backed it up: Chechnya and Aleppo.
What's on Aleppo?
I set that up perfectly, didn't I? All right, I need to get this last story out because I want to get the hell out of here because I've got a headache. Anyway, final story of the day, and I'm going to take you back to New York City, and it would be 1:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it would be the end of the day of Ukraine anyway. It'd be like 8 o'clock. So we pretty much hit the end of day 56 for the news for Ukraine anyway.
Right.
The United Nations reported Wednesday, and no, there's no picture for that. Let me take the Sarmat down, by the way. United Nations reported Wednesday that Ukrainian casualties caused by Russia's invasion nearly 8 weeks ago have surpassed more than 5,000 confirmed cases. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights recorded 5,121 civilian casualties since the onslaught of the invasion on February 24th, a jump from 4,966 casualties reported Tuesday. Wednesday's figures include 2,224 killed, 2,897 injured. Those included the casualties of 631 men, 383 women, 42 girls, and 61 boys. I guess those are children. They separated men, women, girls, boys. Now,
who else did that?
Let me ask you something, though. Why isn't anybody from the BLT, LGQIA plus minus tilde group?
WTF BBQ.
Yeah. Why isn't a single person from... I'm going to be polite about it. Why isn't a single representative from that group in an uproar about this casualty list? Because let me read it back to you. 631 men, 383 women, 42 girls, and 61 boys. What about the other 57 genders? None of them got hurt? Don't you find that a little
'Cause
hard
there's
to
only-
believe?
There's only like 3 states in the country that recognize the other 57 genders.
But I mean, if you were a representative from that group, wouldn't you find this news a little hard to believe? I was gonna say a little hard to swallow, but that innuendo would just make me chuckle like a schoolgirl. But yeah, don't you think they should be a little offended by this story? Just slightly? Like, really? There were no cisgender, whatever, fucking attack helicopter identifiers, whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like, how come in war there's only men and women, boys and girls, children, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria? But here, in the good old US of A, we have allowed a circus. Like,
Because we're in the USA and they're over there.
And now my final thought. That's Jerry Springer. That's Jerry Springer, by the way. That group will take it to 25 letters. They will not let the 26th letter be part of their group. Because as soon as you include the last letter of the alphabet in that group, that means they're just like everyone else. And when you take away their exclusivity, you take away their power. So anyway, that being said, I'm going to play this now. And I want to remind you all that this was the War Room, and this was day 56. And if you're new to my channel, welcome, but if you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out my other playlists and see if my other interests might be of interest to you. I have been doing gun review videos, and there will be a new one on Sunday. I think that's really all I've got. I can't really do the penny arcades and this old gats and stuff right now, just because this show consumes all my free time. Well, that and my new girlfriend. So anyway, like I said before, this was the War Room. This was day 56. We will be back tomorrow, stories permitting. Slava Ukraini, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Slava. Shall not be infringed.